Hello, this is Gerald van Was. This is a video with some easier example, and I think it's about time for some easier example of letter combinations of words, how they are showing themselves, what they mean via the sound in form of or via the letter positions and formations that can be derived from these positions. I have a comparison to the Dutch word KOOK and the English word KOOK, which have a common origin, are almost with the same meaning, but they are somewhat different, and that it makes it interesting to compare both words. While the Dutch word kook means to boil. So you have you can sometimes hear it when you go to Holland, and then you hear expressions like "Oh, I have to cook an egg," which is the confusion with the Dutch word kook and the English word cook, which have a similarity, but they are not exactly the same, because you can't cook an egg. You have to boil an egg. The boiling of the water with the air that comes free towards, and that it boils until the boiling point, so where you can do other things with the material, is with its emphasis on the boiling of the water, to boil, while cook or to cook in the English, to cook, is also said it's also used for the same word. We also cook something. We prepare food, something, but we always associate it with boiled food. So in Dutch, the word kook means two things. It means to boil, but it also means to prepare food, just like to cook. It also means to cook, but it means to cook associated with that boiling always, because once we are going to bake something with flesh, we don't no longer say cooking. We're no longer using the word to cook. Then we only use the word to bake. Well, as far as I know and understand the English well enough, to cook can be both. It can be boiling. It can be baking something in a boiling pan, let's say. You can do that as well, but in Dutch you can't. If I'm mistaken concerning that, and in English it's exactly the same thing of preparing food with boiling. Okay, tell me, but that's as far as that I understand it. But the preparation of food by heating it up and changing its substance, that's for sure in both emphases. It's the same thing, only in the Dutch word it can also have an emphasis on the boiling alone, and that's so weird, but I will show you how this difference exists actually by simply the first letter. For the rest, they are written the same way, with 2 times O and with K at the end. Only the difference, the sound K of coke or cook with the C is exactly the same. So it is quite similar in the way how it looks and how the first letter is pronounced. But there is differences that can be derived from the first letter and from the way how it is pronounced. So to cook, of koken or cook, can be expressed very easily actually, with some variations, but it's this K of the breaking point that you can see, the O, this an environment bubble, a big bubble or big environment circle that you can see, that breaks apart in smaller parts, and it's even getting more and more like that because of the ending K, and it breaks further and further apart. If you take the letters apart and see what they mean, the K can be used very easily for breaking apart, I will go into the more detailed explanation later. Or it can be used as a distinction as well. It's at the same point where the things are breaking apart, you try to distinct something. That's the K. The O is an environment condition, so it is the breaking apart from an environment condition to the next one even. And that makes a certain distinction, or it breaks something apart. That's the same thing. That's KOOK. That's what you have as a first focus, which can be recognized in the boiling of water. But there's also the verb, of course, koken, which is what you do with KOOK, the koken. And there you have the letter N to it, so the emphasis goes, instead of the breaking apart, to the elements that comes out of it. So this gives you more opportunity to look for what is happening after boiling, with boiling, what are the difference of elements. So in that way it comes closer to the English meaning as well. We also prepare food while boiling it, and then we see the differences in the elements. And actually it's also based upon the emphasis on where K starts from. K is not just about breaking apart, but the foundation of these letters, of the first 9 letters in the system, are also about my trying to figure out a focus. I want to focus upon what I can see in space, what I can try to distinct. And the distinction from my center is important, because here with K it's the center position of what I can distinct is breaking apart. So I focus on that, keeping it together very much. I try to keep my focus together despite the fact that something is breaking apart. So that's how you have to understand the letter K. So there is this center point of vision of things that are breaking apart, and you get elements, different elements from it. And this is with the verb koken. It's not just boiling, where you can see the results, but it's also the idea of keeping it together, so that it not necessarily it hangs together, but keep it together from one point, that you can keep the logic together, is also in the letter meanings. So what's the difference then with KOOK? Solely from the written position of the letters, it's not much of a difference. The K or the C are both with the same sound K, and you express them here with the first letter K like this, and with the first letter C as K like this. It seems not much of a difference, but it's not the breaking apart, but it is about the distinction, to see what is happening then afterwards when things are different, not are breaking apart, are different. And the differences will be looked for. So we look into the separations, and we look into what do we have more. And comparison a comparison with the two words KOOK and KOOK, solely of how they are written, is there's only just one difference, is the first letter, which sounds exactly the same, but the focus will become different, because it's both about, you see, I have these symbols here. It's like I'm trying to look into the variations. I try to see the variations from one starting point of view. That's the C. The K is separations that are occurring, just like in C, But here we don't try to see how many variations there are. No, we try to keep it together. We try to keep the separations together. So the focus is slightly different and the effect is different, because if you try to see variations, you will also look and see more variations. If you try to keep it together, you want to have as little as separations as possible. So that's a different starting focus. And the sounds that you also produce, they will help to see what is the difference in focus. With KOOK, we start from distinction with the letter U or U and the sound U, just like the letter U. It emphasizes on all what is developing from within. With the letter U, it is under development. With the letter U, it is in the togetherness, hanging together. It is developing, but it is still also in development. And that's what you see. You watch over the elements and you distinct the elements, and you try to separate them, but also try to keep them together, how they develop and so on. So in the cooking with the C, it's very much looking towards the process. KOOK has not that kind of focus. It's the sound O emphasizes on its separate environments, separate conditions. It are two environments that we will create, two kinds of environments, the before and after, and the timing in between. That's what the O as a letter and as a sound means. I'm going to emphasize on these, in a way, circular environments with moments, with certain moments. Trying to keep it together as well. Now you can, I'll go a little bit deeper into that. You can see what kind of moments come forward for it, and how can you, here a little bit of theory. If you don't understand this part, okay, you can leave it, but it's good to know the theory. In my scheme, you have the first 9 letters are about all trying to keep and try to find a focus in space. All of them. They try to find just a singular point and focus in space. All of these letters are like that. They try to find that focus in space. And there are 3 levels in there. So we have the ATK, that's all in one point. The A is going towards that one point, so it's going from 0 to 1. T is 1, and K is already going to 2 parts. So it is losing its cohesion from there in its center point of vision of trying to find a focus point. U, L, and B next, and then C, M, and X as the last one. So what's the difference? So you have in 2 parts and in 3 parts. So the 3 parts actually, what's in 2, it is I see some differences and I deal with the differences. In C you see, okay, I see many differences, a variety of differences, but I try to keep my focus there. That's the C. I try to distinct the variations that I already have. And the K is, oh, I'm a bit afraid that I'm going to lose my cohesion, so I try to focus on what keeps them together. So you see that difference in focus. So it's also like the first category, the first row in a vertical way is also like it's coming to a distinction. The middle row is the distinction, and the last one is almost losing its distinction. So you can also read it in the theory, and you can read and interpret it in that way as well. So the C is trying to come to a distinction because you already see variations, while you try to keep it focused in one vision, The K is losing this distinction, as you know, in one center point of vision, and it's because it's breaking apart, and it's trying to keep it focused on in one centered vision. The reality, what will that be? If you look at the variations and you have that focus there, you see at the ingredients. Let's say you have the focus on the detailed focus on the ingredients that develop there and so on. That's these variations. That's your attention. Well, kook in the Dutch way, which also means boiling, it is the separation is at its first way of distinction, and the first distinction is with the boiling, and it separates like it is not in variations but in just two conditions, and the two conditions are water in its steady conditions, and the second one is then when you see the air coming up, and it's not just that, that's the boiling thing, the boiling condition, but there's also the cooking condition. And this cooking division that you have there of separation is that you deal with what you have differently in its steady condition or when it is boiling and so on. So you keep that focus together, that the product in the end hangs together. So that's the way you can understand the differences in focus, even though the words are based upon the same foundations, and the slight differences in writing and quite different pronunciation gives you a clue what we are focusing upon, and they can be used both for the same purpose. So the cooking then and the koken, the two verbs here in action, you can see here as well. In the English it's with n, with the Dutch it's in the n. So we try to distinct in the cooking all what comes together in one focus, and a separate focus on what you can do during a certain time. That's how you, with a good idea to do that. So that's how you can translate it from the letters to the meaningfulness in the word I have expressed in one of the previous videos. Or in one of the previous videos, you can check that one if you want to go deeper into that and see how this really is as a focus. The n is a focus which is focusing upon what you can use as objects, as a result, and so on, in a certain time. Then as well in koken, it is not exactly the same thing. So what keeps my mind together there with the K, not to separate, it's almost like koken is like, oh, don't want to blow it because things are changing. It's of course different than the cooking, which goes to the with a focus to the ingredients and see what is coming out and so on, what's coming there what's coming from it. It is used for the same thing, nevertheless. And then the words kok as well, kok as the Dutch word, kok, not with CK but with K, K-O-K. It's the same as kook, but just with one letter O in the middle. So it is not about separation, two different conditions, the O to the O, or the kook, so from water to the boiling conditions. No, the kok or the kook tries to keep its focus in one environment, in one focus, and then it emphasizes again the starting point of the K. I try to keep my focus together so that I want to have it hanging together, and I focus on this one environment that I get a good result. The funny thing is that with this the kook, its headgear is almost like something is boiling there. And so this activity, which is related with the cooking as the boiling, then in this case, is visible in the hat, seemingly, funnily, just as an association, but that's how I associate it quite easily. The kook is that's all about the distinction on the plate, on what he's doing there. So he's cooking and tries also to keep its focus in this way, not also in the same way as with the K, trying not to lose the consistency between the ingredients, because the ending is also K. It will break apart because of this process, so it has to keep its attention, it has to keep its distinction. The C is about distinction. Funny is that the C almost sounds also like to see, and that's what he's going to do. He's going to see what kind of distinctions he needs to use. Okay, I hope this was quite entertaining enough, and that you also could understand from the letter positions alone what the word cook means, and also the Dutch version, kook, and what are the differences and why these emphases are somewhat different, despite the fact that there was almost confusingly the same usage for the word, to the degree, to a certain, up to a certain degree where they can be used, and at another point where they cannot be used. So you cannot cook an egg, but you can boil an egg, of course, that's for sure, but you can cook a meal, and everybody can do that also with the cook as well. You can cook a meal, of course. Thanks for watching. Books, website, I don't know. Bye.